My name is Andy Ginn, and for my business leader presentation, I chose to speak of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was born February 24th, 1955, to Joanne Schiebel and John Jondali, two University of Wisconsin graduate students. Shortly after his birth, Jobs was given up for adoption and was adopted by Clara and Paul Jobs and renamed Stephen Paul Jobs. As a child, Stephen and his father Paul were often found working on electronics in the garage. Paul would show his son how to take apart and reconstruct different electronics, which led to what his job would be eventually. In elementary school, Jobs was a prankster. His fourth grade teacher had to bribe him to study. Jobs actually tested so well in elementary school that the administrators wanted to skip him ahead to high school, to which his parents declined. Later, Jobs enrolled at Homestead High School in 1971, where he was introduced to his future partner Steve Wozniak. After high school, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, where he only stayed 6 months. He dropped out and then spent the next 18 months taking elective classes. In 1974, Jobs took a job with Atari, and then in 1976 began the Apple Corporation with Steve Wozniak at the age of 21 and in his family garage. In 1985, Jobs resigned as Apple CEO due to the Macintosh's inability to keep up with the IBM computer and started a new hardware company called Next Incorporated. Then he purchased the animation company from George Lucas, which later became Pixar Animation Studios. Despite Pixar's success, Next Inc. failed in its attempt to sell its specialized operating system to mainstream America. Apple eventually bought the company in 1997. That same year, Jobs returned to his post as Apple's CEO. Jobs contributed to the computer world in many ways. He helped invent the Apple I computer and the Apple II, which was the world's first mass-market personal computer. In 1980, Apple became a publicly traded company, and in 1984, Apple released the Macintosh computer. Steve Jobs revolutionized the computer industry by democratizing the technology and making the machine smaller, cheaper, intuitive, and accessible to everyday customers. Other contributions Steve Jobs was a part of was the iPod, which became well known around the world and eventually replaced calling music players or MP3 players, but instead calling them iPods. Many other contributions were the iMac computer, iPad, and iPhone. Arguably, Jobs' biggest contribution to Apple and to the world was his ability to create jobs. Stephen is an entrepreneur, and when a company is selling many products, many jobs are created. Stephen's company grew from a startup company to having over 7,000 employees when Jobs resigned in 1985. When he returned to the company, he increased Apple to over 46,500 full-time employees. Jobs bought Pixar Films from Lucasfilms in 1986 and contributed to that company by helping them invent the 3D animation software, which was first seen in Toy Story. The 3D animation allowed the characters to interact with their background, and it also gave the envision of the characters jumping off the screen. It was often stated that Jobs saw the potential of what Pixar could be before anyone else. Jobs' company, Next Inc., did not have quite as much success as the other companies. In 1988, they released the Next computer and later the smaller Next Station. In 1990, ultimately, the computer and the Next Station were failed attempts. However, Next Incorporated released a programming environment called OpenStep, which after Apple bought it, led to the current OS X and iOS operating systems. Many of Steve Jobs' traits that led to his success was 1. His persistence. Jobs started Apple with a high school friend in his family's garage. He persisted, however, by returning in 1997 to rescue the company, and from that time forward, Apple grew into the most valuable technology company in the world. His ability to continue introducing products. Jobs rolled out one sensational product after another. In 2001, in the wake of the World Trade Center attack, Apple introduced the iPod. In 2010, during the recession, when unemployment reached 10%, Apple released the iPad. Jobs strived to change lives. Not only did he change computers and make people want modern technology at work and at home, he also upended the cell phone and music industry. Jobs knew how to create a building frenzy. Under Stephen, Apple cloaked itself in secrecy to build frenzy anticipation for each of its new products. Jobs also knew what customers wanted, even if there wasn't a demand for it. Jobs also knew how to create a need. In 2007 came the touchscreen iPhone, joined a year later by Apple's App Store. Here developers could sell iPhone apps that made the phone a device not just for making calls, but also for managing money, editing photos, playing games, and social networking. Jobs was true to himself. He succeeded by following his own inner voice and intuition. In his celebrated Stanford commencement address, he said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it in living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your inner voice, heart, and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become." Jobs was a very successful man. He challenged many people to put a dent in the universe and to strive to always be better. Steve Jobs' integrity is why I chose to speak about him and also why he was so successful. I hope this business leader presentation shows that. Have a nice day.